one bullshit PlayStation trophy.
So, seeing as the PS5 is either out or is about to be out when this video gets uploaded, I thought now would be a good time to reflect on what we should be calling last gen now, the PS4 era, before going into this shiny new PS5 world, because as we enter the PS5 generation, trophies themselves are changing. Hell, I've even now got a new level, a 600 instead of the 57. So I thought it would be a good time to take a look back at all of the games of this past generation and have a look through all of my PS4 games list to see which games that I failed to platinum on PS4. So for avid viewers of my channel, my first pick will be an obvious one for this video, as this was a game that I loved that sadly went on to break my heart when I was going for the platinum, and that is Mad Max on PS4. And I have to say I was having an absolute blast with this game. I'd finished the story and I'd worked my way around the giant map, clearing out all of the camps and all the little side bits you could do, and I was working towards the up to the task trophy, which was a big trophy that required you to complete a load of non-repeating challenges, which involved things like kills, exploration and car combat and so on. And one of these many challenges was to find and loot all of the 191 scavenging locations in the world. So after spending many hours driving around and picking them all up over the course of a week, I found that after getting the 191st one, the counter at some point glitched and I was stuck at 190 of 191, which was actually a common glitch with the game that affected a lot of players. So that fucked up the trophy and meant that I was unable to get the platinum, and sadly all of my saves had the error too, so I was screwed, and the only way for me to get the platinum now would be to restart the whole thing over. But I feel like I'd probably spent a whole full 24 hours plus on this game already, and it just felt like an absolute waste. So instead of starting over, I just hold out for a patch basically and just waited and waited for them to fix it, and sadly they never did. Though strangely they did patch in HDR support a few years later just randomly, which I just don't get why they didn't do it then, because everyone complained. Over the years I would see some videos on YouTube of people's solutions or locations of their final one that didn't show up on the map, and I'd look at it and think, oh my god, this is it, and I'd go back and boot up the game and try it out, only to find that my heart gets broken all over again, as I've already got that one and it wasn't mine. And now I can't even go back to do it now because the game's servers shut in October, completely blocking the platinum because you needed to get the scraps that would fill up once you log into the game. So now I can't get this platinum at all, which is quite disappointing, to be honest. Next game on my list is Dragon Ball Fighterz, which was a 3-on-3 beat 'em up that was actually really fun, and it was so cool. I never really brought any of the Budokai games or anything like that, so this was pretty much my first Dragon Ball Z game, and I was having fun with it, as the story mode was pretty cool. It was nice to relive all the sort of big sort of fights kind of thing whenever you met a character, even though it was his own story, and it was kind of repetitive in the gameplay, but it was still fun. But my main platinum blocker came in the form of an online multiplayer trophy asking you to reach 530,000 BP, which was the battle points you get from winning matches, and I do quite well with this early on playing online, winning a fair few battles with my Yamcha, Vegeta and Trunks setup. But the deeper I got into the trophy, the more annoying it became, as people were always rage quitting whenever they were about to lose, which would void my win, and even worse, the earned points that I should have fucking got. Then when I'd lose, I'd find that I'd actually drop down so many more points than what I'd actually get for winning. Sometimes I'd lose thousands, and then the next win I'd only get like 100 or 200. So by the time I reached around 400,000, I was just getting more and more angry every time I lost, and after smashing the game box in frustration, I realised it was time for me to give up this platinum. Dragon Ball Z also had a really horrible Zenny grind to get loads of money. I think you needed about 20 million, but that was nothing compared to the grind that I faced in the next game, which was World War Z, as this one just required you to level up everything in the game, and even the online, and when they patched the game to make the grind even longer, well, I just pretty much said fuck you to World War Z. Next up on the PS4 Platinums I never unlocked is Wolfenstein II, because this game is hard, much harder than I found the first game. I mean, seriously, I actually had to turn the difficulty down during my playthrough, something I've never done before, as it was just pissing me off, constantly dying over and over. So by the time I finished my first playthrough, I kind of had enough. Even though I loved the story, I just didn't really want to play it again. And when I looked at the trophy list and saw the Mein Leben trophy, the one that requires you to beat it on that difficulty, which is pretty much a permadeath mode on the hardest difficulty, there was just no way I was going to put myself through it. There was just so many places I remember struggling in, like the courtroom area, the final ship section with the big giant robots, even the start when you're in the wheelchair. They're all really tough bits that I just died on loads, and I hate trophies like this that just make you play for ages on a knife edge, where one mistake can just mean you're just screwed over. It's just bullshit, and I should be able to save and take a break, but you can't in this, so I never even bothered to attempt it, as I just knew I'd be pissed if I got so many hours in only to die and lose all that progress. For me, it's just not a fun trophy. It's challenging, yes, but fun? No way. So I said no to this platinum. Another platinum that I felt would take the fun out of the game was the one for Crash Team Racing, and it's a shame really, because I absolutely loved the original game on PS1. It's my favourite kart racer of all time, and the remake is also pretty awesome, to be fair, and I did want to get the platinum for this, but man, those time trial trophies, no chance I was going to race around the same track over and over trying to beat those times, because it was bad enough trying to beat, Entropy's times, but Nitrous Oxide's times were just in a whole other level, and I know if I'd tried to do that with every fucking track, and even those new ones from Nitro Kart that I'd never played before, I would have just ended up hating the game. So I checked out early really after a single playthrough and some multiplayer with my friends, because sometimes it's better to just enjoy the game and not ruin your experience trying for trophies. I'm sure with time I could have done it, but at what cost to my enjoyment and fondness to CTR, So I just left this one be. Next up is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered, which is the most recent PS4 game on this list that it gave up on trying to get the platinum on. And this was a game that I really loved back in the day on the PS1. It was so much fun, and after playing 2, I didn't play another Pro Skater until Underground 1, which was a different beast altogether, so it was really nice going back to the first 2 games and hearing all those old classic tunes again. And I did have the platinum in mind, and I was loving it, because I just blasted through both campaigns in the launch weekend, and it was then that I noticed something weird about the ranking system, because it was just absolutely bullshit. Seriously, ranking up past level 50 is just so fucking slow, and sadly there was a trophy for getting to level 100, and it would have just been a really awfully long grind. And I read online that people, after getting all the get theirs and the gaps, which are the hardest things you can do in the game, they were still nowhere near getting to level 100. They were usually at around 75, and I just felt like it was just a boring long grind just for the sake of having a grind, because there was nothing really to do unless you wanted to just repeat the campaign missions again and again with multiple different skaters, and that just wasn't for me, and I just didn't want to suffer through all of that and then a really long grind afterwards. And I really feel like if Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 completion got me to level 50, they really should have had 3 and 4 in there to get me to level 100, because otherwise there's just no real content to justify such a really long grind. And yeah, I know there was Tony Hawk's 5, but we can forget about that one, because that was just shite, to be honest. Doom 93 is the next game that I failed to get a platinum trophy in, and this was the game that was released on the PSN store a couple of years ago, and it was one that I thought I would be able to platinum because I had played Doom loads on the PC back in the early 90s when I was growing up, so I was confident I'd be able to do this, to be honest. But unfortunately they had to throw in that one bullshit trophy, didn't they? The trophy for completing the game on hard mode in co-op, and sadly I had neither any friends with the game or any friends that were actually good enough to actually get through this nightmarish mode with me, so I resorted to trying to do this solo in a multiplayer mode, with one player just left idle, and it was an absolute nightmare. I brute forced my way through a few of the levels and got to the final boss of the first episode, but sadly the game just respawns enemies all the time, and it can just lead to situations where you're just fucked because you've died, you've lost all your weapons, and you just can't get through a corridor full of enemies shooting you, and it just really pissed me off. So I gave up on that one, and another one that I gave up on was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which was a beat-em-up game that was released a few years ago, and it's kind of like Dragon Ball Fighterz in a way, in that it's a 3-on-3 battler. And this one, I thought I would platinum this because, hey, it's Power Rangers, surely it's got an easy trophy list, right? And to be fair, it kind of does have an easy trophy list, to be honest, but at the same time, it's also a very grindy and tedious trophy list because it has a load of online multiplayer trophies requiring you to do a stupidly long grind to get them, because you needed to get to a certain rank, and you needed to get so many wins and so many points and everything like that, and it just felt overly grindy and just a desperate attempt to try and keep people playing online. And to be honest, it didn't really work because this game was pretty much dead on arrival, really. I would often search for games and either not find anyone, or I'd end up getting matched with the same handful of people over and over again, and it just wasn't that great, to be honest, and it was just more time spent on it needed to get the platinum that I wanted to give it. And like Dragon Ball Fighterz, you would drop ranks after a loss, and if you tried to boost it, the actual devs would actually ban you, so fuck that shit. So I left that one. Next up, we have a different sort of game in that this is Crisis on the Planet of the Apes VR, which is probably a game you've never really heard of, and it was one that I just thought looked really cool from the trailer, even though it looks a bit crappily done with the graphics and everything. It still looked like a nice little concept. So in this game you play as an ape who has to try and escape the prison compound, and you can use the headset and the Move controllers as your arms to grab and swing around the place to traverse through the levels. You can also get some guns, which is kind of cool, and it's kind of clunky as well though. And the trophies that blocked me from getting the platinum in this game was that it had some time trial trophies, and this being a VR game where you need to use the Move controllers to move around, you can imagine it's kind of clunky and awkward and a bit of a pain at the time. And I'll tell you now, I'm really not a graceful ape swinging around in the trees, so when I tried to go for these time trial trophies, well, I was more Abu when he turns into an elephant than Abu in his normal body, and I just don't get why they put speedrun trophies in this, because it just didn't work. Next up, we have Shantae HalfGenie Hero Ultimate Edition, which was a compilation of the main game, and I think it would have been all the DLCs in it. And I did have fun with this game, and I was enjoying going through it, but I feel like I gave up on this because of some of the trophies where I think you had to complete the game in a speed run, or you had to complete it without dying, and that just really put me off, because it was a fiendishly difficult game at times, very precise in what you need to do in your movements, and it just felt overly long. I think the Shantae on its own, the main game, is actually an easy platinum if you brought it separately, but I brought it with all the DLCs, and I think those had a bit of a harder challenge to them, and I kind of just got bored after I completed the main game, really. It wasn't one that I just wanted to really play, and I think other games just came out and they sort of pulled me away from this one, so unfortunately I never really done it, and I just never had a desire to go back once I had finished those other games and had some free time, so this was one that I just never got. Next up is Evil Within 2. Now, in the first Evil Within, there was this really, really tough and frustrating trophy to unlock, for doing the game on Akumu difficulty, which is basically the hardest difficulty in the game, where you would pretty much die after taking like 1 or 2 hits, and you were just really up against it throughout the whole thing. It was a tough, brutal, and quite frankly unforgiving challenge that was frustrating at times, but it actually let you save, and it would keep your progress. So although it was very difficult, it was also, it kind of gave you a break as well, you know. It was one of the tougher trophies that I unlocked on the PS4, and probably my most one of my most proudest PS4 platinums, to be fair. And despite it being really frustrating at parts, it was very satisfying to unlock it and slowly work your way through the game and get past those difficult areas. And for the sequel, they kind of brought this back, but changed it slightly. So now you could only save, I think it was like maybe like 5 times or something like that throughout the entire game. And this meant that you'd be in for long chunks of replaying the same sections if your last save file was several hours earlier. So it was just a really bullshit kind of fuck you from the game if you died when going for this. And I died quite a lot throughout this game, and I didn't actually enjoy this one as much as the first, and for that reason I just didn't want to try and even go for this trophy, so I just gave up on the platinum. Now, I loved the first Until Dawn, and I got the platinum in that, and when I heard they were making a sort of spin-off sort of sequel game in VR, I was definitely hooked from day one. And Rush of Blood is actually a really fun game, and it is very scary. When you go into that meat grinder room and there's those pigs hanging and just the noise, oh my god, that freaked me the fuck out. That and Resident Evil 7 were some of the scariest experiences I had in VR, and this was a game that I did enjoy playing, and I completed it, and I was going to try and get the platinum, but it had a trophy where you had to complete, I think it was the whole game without dying, and it was one of those games where, because it's VR, it's very, awkward to play it for long points of time, because you get really sweaty and you start to ache and you just get uncomfortable, and that just put me off going for it because it was in VR. And it was a really, tough challenge that to get through it all without making a mistake and dying. And I think maybe it was part of the save file that you had to back up as well, so you had to be careful. But it was just one that I thought, yeah, I'll do it at some point. Maybe in the winter when it's cooler and I'm not going to get as warm. And then winter would come round and I just wouldn't play it because, it's a ball ache to get all the VR out and set that all up. So that kind of put me off playing it as well because it was just harder to dip back into. But it's one that I think I could have easily done, but circumstances meant I just never did it. Yeah. So next up we have another VR game that I gave up on getting the platinum in for a very different reason. It wasn't because it was uncomfortable to play in VR due to the headset aching my eyes or anything like that. No. This one was a much more simple reason as to why I didn't get the platinum, and that was because after playing it for around an hour or an hour and a half, it actually made me sick. Yep, this was the game that made me sick. Seriously, I was online playing with a friend, going through some of the missions in co-op, and all of a sudden my stomach just absolutely went and I just did not feel right. And I just felt worse when I took the headset off and I could just look around the room normally. So I then just had to rush upstairs. I was like, right, I'll be right back. I rushed upstairs and I just threw up completely. I just never went back onto this game after that because it was the only VR game to ever make me sick. There was just something in the way you moved around in this game that just didn't sit right with me, so I just couldn't play it anymore because I didn't want to be sick. And so we now have another VR game. So you can kind of see a pattern here. There's a lot of VR games that I just gave up on the platinum. And this one was the PlayStation Worlds, which was kind of like a glorified demo disc of VR sort of concepts, really. There was that London Gangster one. There was like a sort of Tron sort of style tennis game, and there was a load of others. There was like a bug one or something and a space one, and then that underwater shark one. So there was loads of different ones to play, but for me it was just I don't know, it was a fun little mini game, but it wasn't one that I wanted to sink a load of time into to perfect all of the sort of high score challenges that it had, which tied into some of the trophies, because you'd have to devote quite a bit of time to playing those and perfecting them. And one of the problems I had with playing a VR game, especially like a shooter where you've got to be precise, is that my hands shake quite a lot, so I'm not really going to have as good as aim as I would on a normal game with a pad, so it just meant that I was already at a really disadvantage, and I just thought, nah, it aches my eyes enough as it is trying to look at this, and I just couldn't sink all that time into this to try and perfect it and get really accurate, because my hands I just couldn't do it. So I had to pass on this one, I'm afraid. Now, this was a big game on my list that I knew was going to be really hard going into it, but I didn't quite think it would be as hard as it actually turned out to be. But it's hard in a way that's actually really good, because it actually gets you to play this game even better than you ever thought you would be able to, and it gets you to learn all the tricks to handling the ships and flying around, and just playing it in a much more higher level than you would if you were to not go for these trophies, if that makes sense. So some of the first trophies that I heard were hard were the time trial trophies for beating Zico's Times, who was I think a dev or a QA tester at the company when the original Wipeout came out. And I played those 2 tracks over and over and over and over again, and eventually I beat those times, and I thought after that, I can beat this game, I can get the platinum. But then I moved on throughout the career, and I needed to do all of the races on expert level, and that was just too hard. I just couldn't race good enough to keep up with them, and sadly I just stopped there. I just had to give up. I just couldn't do it. It beat me. Sometimes you just got to know when you beat, really. And Wipeout Omega Collection, while it was really cool, it was a game that just sadly was too good for me. I just couldn't quite get there, and it was just one that I knew would just be way too hard for me, so I let it go. I was happy that I got those 2 time trial trophies and a lot of the other trophies, and I felt like I did a good enough job with it, but I just wasn't quite on that level to get those expert ones done, so I just let it go. Next up is GTA 5, and for me, and this might be a shocker, I never played it on PS3, and I've barely played it on PS4, to be honest. I mean, I've got maybe 1 or 2 trophies. I think I played up to the point where you as the middle-aged man, you end up meeting that other younger kid who you can also play as, which is pretty much right at the beginning. I remember crashing a car into a car showroom, and that was pretty much it. I don't know, it just never really grabbed me, GTA 5. I think I just had GTA fatigue after playing all of them since the first, because they all just kind of feel the same. It's the same sort of missions each time, and it just never kind of grabbed me, so I just never bothered to play it and carry on with the story. The next game that I did complete, but then gave up on the platinum, was Batman Arkham Knight, because for me, this just had too much Batmobile crap, and way too many Riddler challenges and collectibles scattered throughout the world. It was bad enough with those fucking Riddler races in the Batmobile, but worse for me was all of the little Riddler collectibles throughout the city, as they literally just filled the city with hundreds of these things, and then worse still, made them get little mini puzzles in order for you to pick them up. They weren't just ones where you could just straight up see it on a rooftop and grab it. You had to solve a weird puzzle in order to unlock the door that had the collectible in, and as there were hundreds, it just really would have extended the replay of the game just way too long, because, you know, I don't want to have time to collect all these shit as it is, but then they've got to double the amount of time to actually grab them all, because I need to solve puzzles every fucking time. And for me, it just wasn't worth it, because I didn't think this game was as good as the Arkham Asylum anyway. I mean, the Joker bits were great, but yeah, this one was just disappointing, and I just never wanted to play it more than what I had to, so I just never bothered to get the platinum. Next up, we have Trying to the complete story version on PS4, which is actually different to the PS3 version, as the trophy list is actually just all different. This one, you can't actually get all the trophies after doing about half the game like you could in the original, and this one had some pretty hard trophies, to be fair. And it was a game that, because I'd already played it, I just ended up stopping it and playing some other new games. It was just one that I just never got around to coming back to, as I just kind of forgot about it, and that's why I never really done it. The final game on my list is Ollie 2. And this was a 2D skateboarding game that actually was pretty cool, and I had quite fun with it, but it was a very deceptive trophy list, as it's actually a really hard and challenging game to beat. You need to have great reflexes and perfect timing in this game in order to ace the levels, and like Wipeout, it just kind of proved a bit too difficult and frustrating. So I had my fun with it, and I kind of just walked away, or rather skated away from it, to be honest, because like I've said in a couple of the other games on this list, you kind of need to know at times when you're beaten and when to just gracefully exit instead of trying again and again when you know you're not really going to get anywhere and you're just going to end up hating the game. So I just stepped aside, the platinum just stepped aside really, and I just played the game, completed the levels, had fun, and then that was it. It wasn't one that I felt I needed to get the platinum in, and I've never really played it since, so yeah. So there we go. Those are all of the PS4 Platinums that I never got that I own the games for. I've got quite a lot of Platinums for PS4, but yeah, these are the 19 that kind of just got away. Let me know in the comments below if you've platinumed any of these games or if you gave up on these games too. And let me know as well what games you didn't get platinum for on PS4. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.